Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much again for joining me to talk about healing from mental illness. Um, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. If you don't know our story, maybe you've never heard me speak before about this. Um, Maybe someone said, hey, you got to listen to this lady. She's going to talk about mental illness. You likely don't know our story then. For those of you who don't, what you need to know is um, my husband has been completely cured of severe mental illness. My son had cancer 9 years ago and suffered from PTSD and memory gaps from that. And from my perspective, if you are a caretaker of anyone like this, or you have anyone in your family, right? So I speak to that. So we've got kind of three different things happening in our family, and I'll be sharing about that tonight. My husband, so if some of you are on here saying, wait a minute, I thought Mark would be on, I'll share about why in just a moment. There's two words in the medical community. And side note, if you don't already have a pen and paper or a journal or a notebook of some sort in hand, I would encourage you to run and grab that. You're going to want to write some things down. I promise you. Curing and treating. These are really different words. And I've noticed in our communities, whether you're in a medical community or you're in a more holistic natural wellness community, in the natural community, rather, we don't really use the word cure or treatment because we're like, ooh, I don't know if I should touch that, what if, right? In the medical community, they stay far away from the word curing, even though a lot of diseases and conditions are lessening, they're dropping, people are overcoming, right? They're actually being cured. But doctors and professionals, medical professionals, shy away from using these words. And I'm not sure why. What's the difference? Being cured has a different meaning depending on who you speak to. Somebody called me out and asked, what do you consider being cured? And for me personally, I think their symptoms are relieved completely and they don't return. And again, if you Google the term, particularly when it comes to diseases and conditions, you're going to find vastly different things, again, depending on the context, the types of it. I found out there's different types of cancers that they will be okay with saying cured. There's others that they just won't. And I find it interesting, as I talk about belief in a little bit, it's a whole thing about belief. And I think it screws with your brain if someone says, well, we can't really say cured. In your mind, particularly when we talk about physical diseases, you think, oh, well, it could come back. It could come back. And when you think about it, what do you think is going to happen? It can come back. Just food for thought. So why are these two things such hot buttons? Why do we speak about illnesses and diseases, physical and mental, in a way that connotates like a hopeless case, just sort of a muddling through? Okay, we're going to manage symptoms. Even in mental illness, if you Google and look up and ask people, can mental illness be cured? You're going to get vastly different sides of the spectrum, both from the medical community. I find that very interesting. And in my mind, as a mother of a son who is cured of cancer, malignant melanoma, if you didn't know, at age 9, this doesn't happen. Children do not get that kind of a cancer. And as I mentioned earlier, the wife of a husband who was cured of severe mental illness. As I was interviewing him, and he couldn't be here. Actually, he could do anything he wants. He chose to do something else tonight. I'll share that in a moment. I was interviewing him. I didn't realize the mental illness, started years before I thought it did. Years before I thought. I'm gonna need you to go, please. Yeah. You'll have to excuse me. I have 5 children, and like I said, my husband is not home, and so they might join us at some point. Because of this, I will forever say that these diseases and conditions and other ailments can absolutely be cured. Here's why. Write this down. The body was designed to heal itself. The body is designed to heal itself. If somebody has a condition, physical, mental, or even spiritual, if they are willing to do what is needed, the symptoms will dissipate, the condition will go away. If they have the proper tools to help these conditions, right, go away, be cured, they can, again, walk in perfect wholeness. The body is designed to heal itself. It is. The main key component is the person must be willing. If you and I are friends on social media, you know I did a video recently and I spoke about my uncle who was an alcoholic. And my grandma would always say, well, this is just a disease. You have to understand, and make constant excuses. He couldn't help it. It was just a disease. And what I know now, that's utter nonsense. He could help it. He made a choice, a daily choice to do something to wreck his body. The body is designed to heal itself if given the proper tools. How can it not be cured? Scientifically, it doesn't make sense. So if you're into science and you like facts, what you need to understand is you need to understand how the body works. Look, you cut yourself, what happens? Immediately, in a matter of seconds, the body is fighting, trying to fix that. It's trying to heal itself. First you clot, then it scabs over, and eventually the scab falls off and it creates new skin, right? Body is designed to heal itself. From a perspective of scripture, which is where I always go to, and I unapologetically speak to that, and more importantly, what Jesus said. So I'm not one that says, well, this is what my religion, being a Christian, yada, yada. It's none of that. You will never hear me say that. I go by scripture and really more importantly, what Jesus said. Anyone can be healed. You have to want to get well. It wouldn't line up with his design if it weren't true. He designed our bodies. It just wouldn't make sense. In our culture, particularly within the church, our culture has done a very poor job of helping people heal. I'm speaking now more to mental healing, right? Of letting people speak and share what they struggle with. How creepy and weird if my husband would have gone up on a Sunday morning like, hey, pastor, I felt like driving my car off the road on Friday on the way home from work. Got anything that you can help me with? We lost a baby. We had a stillborn baby when I was 5 months pregnant between our second and third child. And I remember going up to one of the pastors. You know how you can go speak to them. And I said, I'm just so sad. I couldn't get out of my sadness. And I was asking for help. Like, give me a freaking hand already, something. And he's like, well, I find reading the Psalms really helps. Thanks. It actually didn't help. I'll be honest. And I'm sorry if that doesn't resonate with anybody, but it didn't help. It didn't bring my baby back. It didn't help my heart heal. So even that, I wasn't struggling with mental illness or depression. I was just sad. But even that is icky and uncomfortable. It gets messy to hear of someone cutting their arm, cutting their leg, just to feel anything. It gets messy and uncomfortable if someone's talking about having suicidal thoughts, right? It gets messy if we talk about, like, I just have a general malaise and a depression. So we just sort of don't talk about it, which creates a feeling of isolation, which creates more of a spiral, and on it goes. Pardon me. I need you to go speak to your brother, or you will go to bed right now.
Can I get some more?
No, you can get out of the bathroom.
Okay.
It creates a weird feeling among our culture, like, kind of like when my daughter just walked in. And I was like, ooh, that's embarrassing. Or maybe you're not. It's sort of like it's uncomfortable. And I just wish it would just go away. We've done a very poor job of supporting the spouses of someone with mental illness and depression. It's uncomfortable. If I were to say to you, dear friend, 10 years ago, my husband is just in a spiral and depressed all the time. I don't know what to do. What would you have said to me? You very likely wouldn't have had any words. We quietly walk away, uncomfortable, thinking the person should just get some help. They need Jesus. Maybe that's what you would say if you're in the church. Of course Jesus can fix everything. But here's the thing. Even Jesus used 3 different types of healing in Scripture. Did you know that? There are 3 different types of words, and I want you to write this down. There's Greek words that are in the New Testament. There's one that means a miraculous or instantaneous healing. There's another one where we get our word therapy from, therapeuo. That means over time. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then there's one, sozo. So there's 3 in there. And the miraculous or instant healing is found 30 times. And that's the one I think in our culture we expect when we talk about cured and treatment. We expect, miraculous, overnight, stories of doctors seeing people rise from the dead and all this. It's really the therapeuo, or the therapy, where we get our word therapy from, is what we see more often. But this is where we get uncomfortable. And then the sozo, which we only saw 3 times in Scripture, but it's really powerful. And it's what I strive to bring. Therapy means to serve, attend to, or wait upon. In other words, you gradually heal over time with care. So if you are someone who is looking for healing or wanting to help somebody heal, very likely with mental healing, this is the type of healing you're looking for. It takes patience. It takes time. It takes resources. It takes diet. It takes essential oils. It takes environmental change. The word sozo, this implies a physical healing, right? Some people who are physically hurting, they can become depressed or have anxiety because it's like, dang, man, I'm just hurting. And it's hard to be cheerful when you're in pain, right? So the word sozo, meaning physical, emotional, and spiritual, it literally means to become sound or whole, mind, body, and spirit. Sozo healing is the one that most people need when it comes to mental illness healing. It's simpler to hand someone medicine and let them be normal. When I asked the pastor, I was just sad. Remember? I just said that. Just sad. And he was just wanting to hand me a scripture and go away with my little problem, with my little sadness. It was uncomfortable. People don't like to see women cry. People don't like to see men cry. It's uncomfortable. But if we can dive in and lock arms with these people and be uncomfortable and be comfortable with the uncomfortable, we'll see a lot of people heal. It's easier to hand someone a prescription and say, okay, good, you take your medicine and then come back when you're just normal. Rather than to dive into these types of healings. Maybe we lay hands on them and pray and they're instantly healed. Maybe we lock arms with them and we walk over time, a period of time, and we do the therapy healing. Or maybe we teach people, which is what I do, about the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual healing. Interesting tidbit about the word pharmacy. In case you're interested, when I first learned this, I was like, that's telling. There's a word in Scripture, it's a Greek word, pharmakeia. And this Greek word, it's defined in our Greek dictionary as witchcraft or magic. It's the use of spells and magics and potions. It's involved using drugs, some sort of magic, whatever. And I just find it interesting that the medicine that we prescribe for people with their mental illness derives its meaning from the word witchcraft and magic. Yet the church and the culture doesn't mind sending people to pharmakeia to get help. I think that's interesting. Words matter. Because we're unaware, or whatever the hang-up is, we might choose to medicate. Our mission in our family is to help demonstrate that it is possible to heal from mental illness and to help you have an increased mental health and vitality. Now, there are some of you on here that you're here listening or live, or you're coming on later listening, hoping that I'm going to give you some tools to help your loved one. Maybe you don't struggle with mental illness or anxiety or depression or PTSD, but you know someone that does and you're desperate. It's like, when you're sitting in church and you're like, I hope this person's listening. This is very much for you personally. And when you know better, you do better. So right now, stop thinking about that person that you want to help and fix and think about yourself. Okay? And I promise you, we'll give you some tools that you can lock arms with Mark and I and our son, and you can go talk about it to other people. But just for right now, I sense somebody's on here listening, either now or later, thinking about that person who wish that they could be here to hear this. Just you do you. You focus on you. There's many reasons someone struggles with anxiety, depression, mental illness, PTSD. It's such a mixed bag. And when I was talking to my husband, he's like, yeah, for sure. Maybe someone doesn't struggle with what he did. Maybe it's something different. Maybe someone had traumatic brain injury, and so now their brain doesn't work as well as it does. For whatever the reason, here's some stats that I want you to know about. 1 in 12 adults have a mental health condition. Excuse me, did I say 1 in 12? I meant 1 in 5. Strike that from the record. 1 in 5 adults have a mental health condition. That's over 40 million Americans. 40 million Americans. Youth mental health is worsening. When I read this statistic about youth, I almost had a full-blown come apart because I thought, I have a child going off to college. I have one who's about to be 16. I have another who's 13, and I have a couple more coming up. And I'm thinking, youth mental health is worsening? The rates of youth with severe depression increased, listen to this percentage, from 5.9% in 2012 to 8.2% in 2015. Even with severe depression, 76% of these sweet babies are left with no treatment. They're left to their own devices. More Americans have access to services, and yet people aren't getting help. People aren't reaching out. 56% of American adults who have mental illness do not receive any sort of help at all. They just don't. And I think this is the situation. This is tragic, especially when it comes to our youth. So when Mark and I decide to dive into this type of a topic, please understand what I'm about to share with you, with my husband, is a complete, whole, in our right minds type of healing. Write this down. From the foods that we eat, the things that we say, the things we listen to, music, television shows, movies, all of this, the stuff that we put in our house, the stuff that we clean our homes with, the places where we work, the friends we choose to hang out with, Does that make if you are not curating your circle to have nothing but life-giving friendships, you're asking for mental illness. You're asking to be depressed. You're asking for anxiety. Like attracts like. And as we've changed all of this in the last 6 years, 5 years maybe with my husband, our lives have taken a radical turn for the better. If we choose to be healthy, keeping a clean mind, living a more high-frequency lifestyle, sometimes it's looked on as different or odd, maybe a little bit weird. When my husband decided to go with a plant-based diet because he was terrifically unhealthy, pre-diabetic, cholesterol through the roof, grossly overweight, a lot of people thought, well, that's pretty radical. I would think taking a sack of medication with a laundry list of side effects is pretty radical. So my husband's not here because he chose to work at Fenway Park. This is what he does. We do Young Living essential oils as our main source of income, but when we moved to Boston, my husband is passionate about sharing this information with anybody who will listen. He has a love and a lust for baseball like no other. We all do. And so it made sense to go work at Fenway Park. They happen to be having a home game tonight, so my husband will not miss a game because if he misses a game, he misses an opportunity to pour into these people. With his permission, I have all this information to share with you. But the coolest thing is the fact that he's at Fenway Park is part of why I'm able to share with you. He has a blast doing it. He gets to share with this beautiful community of people who really need some help. He shares essential oils with all of them. If you ever go to Fenway Park and you're in the section where they serve you food, all of your servers will actually smell like Stress Away because he's constantly passing it around in the kitchen. But more importantly, when they're back there chit-chatting, waiting for the orders, he tells them his story so that they can share in the same freedom. He's there because he loves it and it's super fun, and he can go when he wants, and he can go how often he likes without feeling guilty, without just feeling shame. Most people spend their whole lives in shame and fear, not doing what they love with who they love because of shame, fear, regret. And my husband has blown past all of that. Everything I share with you, I'm just going to say it one more time. I will share with his permission. He knows everything I'm about to share with you. And so there it is. I asked him today, when did it start feeling dark for you? And he was saying, really more late in high school. He would just cut himself. He'd sit, very funny. He counted stairs, and the very middle part of the stairs in his home growing up, he would sit right on the middle. He didn't know whether to go up or go down. It didn't make sense to me because my brain doesn't work that way, but to him, that was a big part of it. Like he always had to sit on the middle stair, and he would cut himself just to feel, because he just felt so numb, like nothing really mattered. And so he would do that. And he's like, I wasn't cutting myself to kill myself. I just was doing that. And he said, from then on, dark times just followed. I started getting overweight at the same time. And for all of us who are just naturally, fit and healthy, choosing, the right foods to eat, I said, well, do you think that maybe, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Did you get overweight and then you got depressed, or did you get depressed and then you got overweight? He said it was the exact same time. It was the exact same time. So neither, right? It all ran together. And fast forward, so I guess I said he was about 17 or 18. He went and joined the military. Always a great choice for someone who isn't thinking clearly. And because the military is in the military, I grew up military. And for those of my friends who are Army brats, military brats, or whatever, or you yourself were in the Army, they have zero tolerance for anyone who's overweight. And so my husband was terrifically, grossly out of shape. When he joined, they made him drop the weight super fast, and he had a lack of sleep. So rapid weight loss, lack of sleep, mixed with alcohol and cigarettes is a bad combination. When he was in Korea, he ended up being in a mental hospital. They put him in a mental hospital, which didn't fix him, but it got him, the Army doctors got him physically back on track. They gave him medicine to sleep, medicine to wake up, right? So they helped his sleep patterns. They gave him food, made sure that he ate, and made sure his sleep cycles were on track, and then away he went to Germany, where he did a lot of drugs, because drugs are very prolific in Europe, and we're in the 90s. When he got back to the States, he didn't have as much drug access, so that stopped for the most part, but lots of drinking, lots of self-medicating. This is so indicative of someone who is in pain. This is why when I think about my uncle having been an alcoholic, I'm like, well, yeah, no duh. His dad was shot and killed when he was 2. He had a lot of pain. My husband quit smoking, and his sleep apnea got really bad. Now we're married at this point, and he decided to quit smoking. He didn't quit nicotine. He did one of those little patches, right? But wanted to quit smoking, didn't want to be a bad example for all of our children. We just had our 3rd baby. His sleep apnea was out of control. My stepdad dropped dead of a massive heart attack, and it just spiraled. Our oldest son started kindergarten. It was just a lot of emotional trauma for my husband. It just all kind of came to a head. He went ahead and got on medication. You guys know all the ones, Prozac, whatever. I can't think of the names of them. And he had a lot of side effects. And he would ask the doctor, hello, this is super no fun, these side effects. So I'll read you the side effects of these meds. Nausea, increased appetite and weight gain. That's really great for a guy who's super overweight anyway. Loss of sexual desire, not great when your wife is young and, still want to do the things. Fatigue, drowsiness, insomnia, blurred vision, which is funny because he wears glasses, so that's not helpful. Dizziness, constipation, and the last 3 send me in a tizzy. Agitation, irritability, and anxiety are common side effects of antidepressants. Does anybody else see anything wrong with that? You're taking a medication that a side effect is what you're taking the medication for. And I'm just like, and then when I read and did some research, even more diving in, a lot of the information was, well, these side effects shouldn't last too long, a couple weeks, a few months. If it lasts longer, check with your doctor. So you're playing like drug roulette, right? You're trying to fix what's going on. My husband asked the doctor about these, like, I don't like this. The doctor said, well, it's a trade-off. You want to not be sad and depressed and spiraling out of control. So you have to decide, which do you want? It wasn't that Mark felt amazingly better. It wasn't a good trade-off. He was just able to function. He just didn't feel at all. He would numbly go through his day. He didn't spiral. He didn't want to drive the car off the road. Because see, what happens with drugs or medication in this, when I speak about drugs, I'm speaking about antidepressants, I should say that, which all drugs do this, but right now I'm speaking about this. They interfere with the neurons in our brain that send signals right through the neurotransmitters. So it's like they just cut it off. So we don't have the dopamine that gets released. We don't have the serotonin. We don't have the endorphins. It's just sort of flatline. He started turning around with his diet change. He came home from a routine checkup. He worked at Bank of America at the time. And like I said earlier, the diabetes or pre-diabetic was here, triglycerides here, cholesterol through the roof. And he was married to me. And if you've ever met me in person or sat down with me, you know that I have zero tolerance for things that can be fixed. Zero tolerance. God forbid you get a hangnail in my house. I'm like, what? Are you dying? Did it fall off? He knows this is the wife he's coming home to with a sack of medication. And so he decides, you know what? We're going to go ahead and change this. So he chose to do a plant-based diet. And this was the catalyst that saved his life in so many ways. Because here's what's happening. As he's feeding his body some healthy foods, not going through the drive-through at Whataburger and getting like the greasy, I think they're super proud when they roll it through the shiny grease, right? Not putting that in his body anymore. He's starting to lose some weight. it's amazing what happens to your brain. And after about a year of doing this, he started diving into essential oils more. We got more into it. Our son had the cancer. We were diving into, he was like, dude, that's super weird. I'm sorry, but a bottle, like really, what can it do? I don't know. Some of you ladies watching, you understand what I'm talking about. The guys are a little slower to get on board. But we were doing a biblical oils study in our essential oil community group. And I was diffusing one every single day just to see. I was taking notes, like, how does our family respond when we diffuse this one? What's happening? How do we all feel? Just kind of thinking, doing that. And there was a few in particular that he was just drawn to and like, this is incredible. What is this? And from then on, this gave him the courage to stop taking his medication. For the first time in ever, my husband felt joy. He felt happiness. He felt peace. And at this point, I need to let you guys know, you need to understand what essential oils do. They do not do the healing in the body. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Essential oils do not heal the body. When I put this oil on my body right now, it is not healing it. What it's doing is it's creating an environment within my body, in the cells, so that my body can heal itself. When I inhale it, when I diffuse it, when I was diffusing those biblical oils, and my husband came over and put his head in our diffuser, what those essential oils were doing were creating an environment in his brain so that the brain could send proper signals. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Essential oils to create a space to do this quickly in the body, in the organs. The essential oils do not do the curing of the condition. They simply create an environment so that the body can do what it's designed to do. Going back to when you have a cut on your hand or your arm or your leg or whatever. The body immediately starts to clot, scab, and grow new skin. You apply an essential oil to that, right? Something that God breathed, and away it goes. It grows because he said, let there be plants on the earth, and it was so. So you apply an essential oil to the cut and you create an environment for the skin to clot, scab, and grow new skin efficiently, rapidly, without scarring, as our God intended originally. Before the oils, he had started diet and exercise, and it helped quite a bit. That was huge for him. But not enough to give him the courage to feel like he could do it without the medication. It was a huge improvement, huge diet and exercise. The essential oils were just another piece to his health puzzle. In fact, for my husband, and he made me promise I would tell this, and because I'm recording and he will watch this later, I have to say this. Otherwise, he'll be like, you didn't say the things. So here we go. I wholeheartedly agree, by the way. For my husband, he has to run at least 4 miles a day in order to keep up that mental track of wellness. And here's the thing. You might say, well, then he's not cured. Oh, no. He just knows how to release those happy, feel-good hormones. See what I mean? Mental illness is all in your head. It truly is. If you're willing to do the things, you don't have to deal with it anymore. My husband, he can run a mile and he has a fine day. But his body enjoys that feeling of running. It enjoys all those endorphins that you get from running. So he enjoys, he's like, you know what? When I run 4 miles, I just feel amazing. If he runs 6, he can conquer the world. That is a true story. I'm obligated to tell you, like I said, from my husband, that every excuse in the book that you have, that you're saying you cannot run, he says that that's nonsense. This is all for my husband. If you were sitting here, he'd be telling you this. He said, all those ailments that you're thinking of right now that you're saying, but Jan, Mark, I have this, I have that. He's like, yep, I had him. He had the joint pain. He had hip pain. He's not built to run. My husband is like a sail. He's got a giant body and these little short squatty legs. We're the same height, by the way. He's not built to run. His feet are really flat because of the Army. Running in not jump boots, but Army boots is not good for the body, not good for the feet. But he's conquered all of those ailments through the things I just mentioned, through eating plants, using oils. He's able to run pain-free. He runs at least 20 to 30 miles each week. And ladies, and I said this to him, sir, I have all these women who are going to be listening going, I have big boobs, I can't run. And he's like, yeah, but he says that he's been in a lot of running clubs and he's seen some chesty women and they ran just fine. So there's that. He also says, women, we are designed to run. We're built for endurance and we're built for distance. And here's the funny thing. As he's telling me this and I'm doing my research, I thought, holy crap, if science isn't backing up my husband. Study after study after study talks about running, specifically running or walking really fast, at least 5 miles a day, is vital for our mental health. Study after study says that to generate new hippocampal neurons. So the hippocampus is like a little seahorse shaped. That's what it means in Greek, seahorse. It's two little thumb size, right, shapes in our brain. In order to create new hippocampal neurons, is to exercise, specifically to run. Studies have shown that people who exercise regularly and run and who are physically fit have a much bigger hippocampus. The more you run, the bigger your hippocampus will get and the less risk you have for developing and continuing in mental disease. And so here's the thing. What we realize is that I'm sure if you know anything about the brain, you've heard the word neuroplasticity or brain plasticity. It just refers to our brain's ability to change throughout life. When we're babies, it occurs 3 different ways in time. So when we're babies at the beginning of life, when the immature brain organizes itself, if there's a brain injury, right, to compensate for a lost function, maximizing remaining functions. You've seen that happen with people. And then even throughout our adulthood, whenever something new is learned or memorized, which is just incredible. This is why, this information right here is why I can stand firm and say anybody can be cured and healed from mental illness. If they couldn't, this information about neuroplasticity would be a lie. And here's the deal. 30 years ago, scientists, doctors would have said, yeah, the brain can't change. If you had an issue with your brain, they just throw up their hands and go, and we're done. Sorry, pal. Have a nice life. But now they know this is just simply not so. Countless biblical accounts, by the way, of people being put back in their right mind backs up the science, which is what I'm more interested in. But, you choose whatever you like. In any case, it's backed up. The human brain has an amazing ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections between brain cells or neurons. So you've got genetic factors, right? Some people might argue, well, mental illness is hereditary, maybe. Environmental factors people are living in, they grow up in, actions of each person. The foods we eat, I mentioned, play a huge role, a significant role in that plasticity. But it all boils down to choices. Yes, genetic factors play a part, a very small part, 10% specifically. 10% of how we develop mentally and even physically, disease and whatnot, conditions is all that's a factor. The other 90% is environmental factors, including our thoughts. Our thoughts are huge. 10% is only a portion of how things manifest in our bodies. Research shows that our brain never stops changing through learning. If we keep learning. When we learn more, when we do more, when we run, this is why running is so amazing. It not only gives you more blood vessels, but it creates more neurons in your brain. It creates a bigger hippocampus. So when we do this, we have new levels of connections between the neurons in our brain. Did you know that when you become an expert in a specific area, your brain has to grow in order to deal with that new skill? So I was a hairdresser for 100 years. And my brain is probably shrinking because I could cut hair in my sleep, right? And then when I learned about essential oils and then how to teach them and how they work in the body and they help the body create an environment so that it can heal itself, my brain's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm learning all this stuff and all the different neurons are connecting and they're growing and I'm learning more and I'm reading more and I'm researching. And all of a sudden I become an expert in this area. And now this part of my brain that deals with it is much bigger. There's some examples that I read about, and I wanted to share this one with you because it really, again, this is my husband. It totally speaks to my husband. It really draws out this picture beautifully. So London taxi drivers have a larger hippocampus that's in the posterior region of the brain than London bus drivers. Why is that? Because this region of the hippocampus is specialized in acquiring and using complex spatial information in order to navigate efficiently. A taxi driver in London has to navigate around in and out different cities. Bus drivers follow the same pattern all the time. They cannot switch. I said this is specific to my husband because my husband, when he goes to Fenway Park, he takes the subway down there with his bike, gets off, and then he rides through the streets of Boston. And it makes me laugh because he's like, I love just right. He navigates and he goes all these different ways. Every time he does this, his brain grows and grows and grows. And to see him when he comes home, he's elated. Why? Because he just learned a new route. He just conquered something. He loves going 40 and 50, I think it's only 40 miles an hour, as fast as he's ever gone on his bike, past all the cars that are stopped. And to navigate and to have his brain be awake. If you struggle with mental illness, the quickest way to stop it is to learn something new. Dive in, something life-giving. Grow your brain. Grow your brain. A surprising consequence, you guys, of neuroplasticity is that brain activity is associated with any given function. It can actually move from different locations as it's needed as a consequence of experience of brain damage. In other words, if someone has brain damage, if someone suffers a stroke or any sort of issue, right, from the brain, neuroplasticity shows that your brain can actually, that activity can change to another portion of the brain to help the body function. There was a man who in his 50s suffered a stroke. And so the left arm was paralyzed. During his rehabilitation, see, doctors know this. They put his good arm, right, so his right arm, they put his good arm and they immobilized it. And they made him clean tables with his left arm that was paralyzed. At first, as you can imagine, it's like, well, that's super mean. This is all part of the rehab. So the good arm, immobilized. The bad arm, he's got to figure this out. This is his task. So slowly, the bad arm starts to move. He learns how to ride again. He's playing tennis. The brain compensated for the damage that was done so that his left arm couldn't move, right? We immobilized it and it forced the brain to go, okay, let's figure this out now. This is all in the brain. This is how our brain can change. So we have our hippocampus, we have our amygdala. Together, they form the emotional center of the brain, or the limbic system. This is responsible for our emotions, our survival instincts, and our memory. And if we do things to create change, to create bigger, more vibrant, healthy hippocampus, a little hippocampal community, our bodies can physically change, and our mental health will be vastly greater. Vastly greater. These brain areas that I'm speaking of, the hippocampus and the amygdala, the emotional center of our brain, they have a unique capacity to generate new neurons every single day. Did you know that the human brain gets 70 new brain cells in the hippocampus every day? Most of these neurons, though, they don't survive. In their newborn sort of premature phase, they need a great deal of support to survive, to grow, and to become an active member of this little community of neurons. We have the capacity to grow new neurons above and beyond what is generally produced in our hippocampus, and to make them become mature and strong within weeks and months. And the way to do this, I'll go back to what my husband said, this is all the science that supports him, is to exercise, specifically to run. If you don't want to run and you want to argue with him, say, it's not for me, that's fine, you do you. Walking a lot. Cardio. You have the capacity to grow new neurons above and beyond what is generally produced. Why wouldn't you? And again, for those of you thinking about so-and-so and you wish they were listening to this, what are you doing? How are you growing new neurons? How are you making your brain bigger? How are you doing it? What are the things that you have put in place? See, I'm sharing all of this information, the science part of it, because it's science. Science says our brains can change. Science says that we can heal and be cured from mental illness, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. This is all very simple. Very simple. But some of you, when I start talking about the hippocampus and neurons, and then you're just like, that's brain stuff. Listen to me. You have one body. You have one brain. You must take care of it. Why are you going to somebody to ask their opinion, right? We go to a doctor, we get one opinion, we get a second opinion. Why are you going to them for advice? It's not their body, it's yours. Why are you not doing something? Study the brain, study the body. Write this down. Don't check out. Don't check out on me. So as we study that our hippocampus can now grow even bigger, we can grow brand new neurons. Those small little baby ones can grow taller and larger and stronger by getting the right nutrition. Remember I said 700 a day, but unfortunately not all of them survive. Why? Because they're not always nurtured. So imagine if you have these sweet baby seeds, if you are at all gardening, if that's, I don't even think that's a word, but if you're well versed in the garden, you maybe have a green thumb, or if you're like me, maybe a brown thumb, but you plant these seeds and you're watching, and all of a sudden the new little sprouts pop up. What are you going to do? You're going to be like, well, screw it. Let's just see what happens. No, these are your baby seeds, your little sproutlings. There's a word, and I'm totally forgetting it right now. You're going to nurture it. You're going to care for it. You're going to speak over it. You're going to give it the proper food. You're certainly not going to go and put it in the sunshine where it just can blaze down on it and burn it up. Not new baby ones. You're going to give it a little sun. And so these new neurons, these premature neurons, the small ones that are born every day, they have the capacity to grow taller and larger and stronger by exercising and by getting the right nutrition, plenty of oxygen. Hello, if you are an essential oil user, can you please pull out an oil right now and breathe it in? Let's all do that together. Because here's the deal. We just oxygenated our brains even more. These oils bring oxygen and life into our brain. It's like, ooh, it just wakes you up. Getting plenty of oxygen and giving it stimulation. Some of the ways that we can do this, proper nutrition, nourishing these hippocampal neurons, includes eating foods high in omega-3 fatty acids and nuts. Most people just don't get enough of this. Or you gorge yourself on salmon, and so now you have this other part of it. Now you're getting all this extra fat. It's a fatty fish, right? Or we gorge ourselves on maybe olive oil or whatever else, and omega-3. We're like, oh, it has omega-3 fats. Let's just keep eating. Hold on. There's a whole thing about you want to keep a nice fit, right? You don't want to be too heavy so you can't run. There's a balance. So taking a supplement is so key. I used to resist taking omega-3, and my mom just is always preaching the good news of omega-3 fatty acids. And she's like, as a vegan, you shouldn't. You know how moms are, right? Well, she's right. We all need this, not just me as a plant-based eater. In fact, I probably get more omega-3s than most people because I'm eating a lot of flax. I'm eating a lot of nuts. Tons and tons of it. We cook with olive oil. For us, we take Omega Gize. Right? Young Living has a supplement that is an omega-3 fatty acid. It's got clove oil. It's not going to go rancid, and it's not going to taste like fish. It's delightful. Higher blood levels of these important fatty acids, this is key. This is going to help building blocks for the neurons. It's associated with larger hippocampus size, better memory, and a much lower risk of developing any mental disease. I am not a nutritionist, though I know a lot about food. What I do know is taking supplements is critical for your mental health. Taking a good supplement, not something that's going to give you expensive urine, not something that they're going to find in your colon 50 years from now when they, dissect your body. It is critical to take supplements that are actual food, that are not just going to be covered with shellac. I can totally help you if you have no means for that. But our bodies don't get enough nutrition in our culture that we've created, right? I'll go back to in our church culture, church lady foods. Right, it's like a prize. My husband, when we lived in Texas, he would lose his Schmidt when they would have this men's breakfast, a prayer breakfast, and he was like, oh, they're serving eggs and bacon and sausage. He's like, what the hell? How is this giving life to their bodies? This isn't the kind of food that's good for our mental health. He was so acutely aware of how foods affected his mental capacity and his mental wellness. And what I think happens is a lot of men don't understand that when you eat this food, it actually screws with your brain. Did you guys know that if you eat junk food, it sends a signal to your brain, and your brain goes into the fight or flight mode? It doesn't know what's happening. And so then it creates stress and anxiety. So what do you do with this information? Like I said, some of you are secretly wishing your loved one or your friend was listening to this. And you could share this information. Some of you saw some posts I've done on social media when I'm like, come on, what are we doing? Guys, the alarming stats for children, for youth that are depressed, this is ridiculous. The challenge is, though, that we have created a culture, all of us are a part of it, where talking about this stuff is not okay. We're like, it's messy, it's weird. And I'm going to speak to people who call their children and young adults and youth teenagers. Stop it. Please stop. Here's why. When you say the word teenager, it connotates a bad, it's just like a bad word. Like, well, you know what, they're teenagers. Like, ugh, you just roll your eyes thinking about it. We wonder why our children roll their eyes. Call them children. Call them champions. Call them youth, young adults. Speak life over them. And if they are low, if they're having a bad day, stop. Listen. Don't chalk it up to, well, you know, they're hormonal. Well, yeah, of course. Their bodies are changing at an alarming rate. They need someone to dialogue with. They need a conversation partner. They need to say, I don't know how to handle these feelings. Have a conversation with them. Lock arms with me, guys. Let's change our culture of youth. Let's raise them up so that they feel encouraged and safe to talk about this. And I know some of you have said, well, there's a stigma around the words mental health. Well, let's change that. How does it change? We maybe can't change however many million people there are in our country and on our planet, 7 billion. But we can sure as heck change how we speak about it in our own community. We can be people who listen, who are more interested in what the other person is saying and listen for cues, for keywords. Mental illness is not silent. If you are aware enough, if you are not self-absorbed and you're aware, you can pick up on it real quick. I promise you. The key is you got to listen, and you have to be willing to be messy. You just have to. If we open up the conversation, the person who struggles with it must be willing to get well. My husband was willing to get well. He wanted to change. No one had ever told him this is possible. He comes from a long line of family members who struggle with mental illness and severe depression and anxiety. And, you know, it's like, well, what are you going to do? So it starts there. There has to be a belief. It turns out that just simply believing that you have the power to physically change your brain, just doing that can help you overcome. If you are walking and you're deciding to run with someone who struggles with this, opening up the conversation, taking away the stigma in your own community, in your own conversations, taking away that stigma and saying, hey, you know what? This can get better. I don't know how. We're going to lock up. We're going to talk about it together. Maybe you don't know how. I know how. Maybe you're just like, it can get better. I promise you. Be willing to share your belief. Sometimes people just need to press into your own belief, right? Does your person who you're thinking of need cold, hard facts, science? Give them some research they can sink their teeth into. The library is littered with it. Do you guys still go to the library? We do. I mean, seriously, go to the library. You will find so much research on this. PubMed, tons of articles on PubMed. Google.Scholar, again, tons of articles. Testimonies of people, like my husband. Many people will agree the medical community will not share this information because let's be real, there's no money in people getting healed. There just isn't. So you're not going to find this information from your family doctor. You're just not. It's a noble idea for the medical community to want to bring more resources available to the mental health patients. But keeping them as patients is just cruel. It is. It's like giving bread and water to a prisoner just to keep them alive. But that's what it is. When we're thinking about diet, you know, when I speak to a lot of people, they're like, oh man, I don't want to go plant-based. That sounds really difficult. And, you know, whatever. I just have one simple starting, just a jumping point. Sugar. If you or your person that you're thinking of now, that now, by the way, I don't know if you realize it's okay to think about that person now because you're done thinking about you. Maybe you still think about you. I don't know. Getting rid of sugar would be huge. The average American consumes 5 times the amount of sugar that we need on a daily basis. 3 pounds or 6 cups of sugar is consumed by the average American in 1 week. 3 pounds. That's a lot. Not only does this attribute to the obesity and diabetes, right? Sugar consumption has scary health effects on your brain. Overconsumption of sugar impairs our neurological function. It can help, or it can develop a resistance to insulin, right? And insulin strengthens the synaptic connections between the brain cells, helping them to communicate better and form stronger memories. So are you guys picking up on this? Sugar. Add an omega, take out your sugar. And I'm talking sugar of all kinds, all the beverages, sweet tea, soda, all of that. So see, here's the thing. The insulin levels in the brain are lowered as a result of excess sugar consumption, and our brain is impaired. Eating too much sugar in your diet has been shown to correlate with increased depression. Here's the alarming thing. Well, there's so many alarming things I said. Apparently, that's my word of the night. But think about how many children and young adults consume so much sugar. Just from the stat I shared. Beverages that they have, foods they eat, French fries have sugar. Think about it. Again, how can we lock arms together? We can just simply remove sugar out of our diets. We can add an omega-3 to our children's diet, to our own diet. You can be a friend and gift someone some omega-3s. Mental illness, healing from it, being cured of depression, chronic depression, being cured of anxiety. It is very simple. The person has to be willing, and we as a community, especially believers in Jesus, have got to be willing to be uncomfortable, to be okay with the uncomfortable, to be okay with the hard conversations. And I'll tell you what, it's a gorgeous sight to see someone go from being at Disneyland, no joke, totally numb, asking them, you having a good time? Yeah, why? You should tell your face. It's like a family joke that we had. To now waking up every single day. And my husband's like, it's an amazing day. And I'm like, I still am shocked. Like, who is this man I'm married to? Who is this man? He's completely different. If you knew my husband 9, 10 years ago, and you know him now, you would stand in awe of and say, yep, if Mark Weir can change, anybody can change. And my friend, if he can change, I know that you can change. I promise you.